shot at, beaten by mobs, arrested, imprisoned, and tortured for Christ. Other than that, just an average guy, right? Peter and his wife, Lenora, have been blessed with 4 children whom they have homeschooled. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Dr. Peter Hammond.
Good morning. I greet you in the wonderful name of our Lord and our Savior, Jesus Christ. We always like to start with hymn singing. Shall we stand and sing the Pilgrim's Progress hymn, Fight the Good Fight with all thy might.
Thy might, Christ is thy strength and Christ thy right. Lay hold on life and it shall be thy joy and crown eternally. Run the straight race through God's good grace. Lift up thine eyes and seek his face. Life with its way before us lies. Christ is the path and Christ the prize. Cast there aside upon thy guide. Lean and his mercy will provide. Lean and the trusting soul shall prove. Christ is its life and Christ its love. Faint not nor fear, his arms are near. He changes not and thou art dear. Only believe and thou shalt see that Christ is all in all to thee.
Amen. Let us pray. Lord God, we thank you, we praise you for the wonderful privilege we have of being your children. We thank you, Lord God, for this day, for this opportunity. We pray, Lord God, that you would enable us to push from our minds the distractions of the week, that we can focus on you, that we can focus on your word, that we can focus on your will, your worship. We thank you, Lord God, for the tremendous privilege we have of being your sons and your daughters, your servants and your soldiers. Lead us and guide us, we pray, in Jesus' precious name. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Thank you. Please be seated. Well, it is a joy to be here. I only arrived in the States on this side of the Atlantic on Wednesday night. Still adjusting jet lag wise over here. But this afternoon I'm heading out straight after lunch to another conference in Idaho. I got myself double booked. And put on the first part of this and the second part of that. Our subject is transforming the culture through textbooks. Our mission started a Reformation Society back in 2005. I've just done a mission around Europe. I went to 11 countries in 5 weeks, ministered everywhere from Northern Ireland to Romania and Poland, and the highlight was getting to Wittenberg, Germany, Zurich, Switzerland, and Geneva. And I got to Saint-Pierre, Schloss-Kirche, the Grossmünster, all the places where the Reformation was launched. And I came back determined to launch a Reformation Society in South Africa and for Africa. Well, we've gotten more and more concerned about modern textbooks. Hosea 4 verse 6 says, "My people are destroyed from lack of knowledge." Now we all know that verse. That part of the verse is quoted a lot, but the full verse is not as often quoted. "My people are destroyed from lack of knowledge. Because you have rejected knowledge, I will also reject you as priests. Because you have ignored the law of your God, I will also ignore your children." That's a terrifying verse. As a father and now a grandfather, the worst thing I would ever want is to be responsible for any grief to come upon my children or grandchildren. The German reformer Professor Martin Luther warned almost 5 centuries ago, "I'm much afraid that schools will prove to be wide gates to hell unless they diligently labor in explaining the Holy Scriptures, engraving them in the hearts of youth. I advise no one to place his child where the Scriptures do not reign paramount. Every institution in which men are not constantly occupied with the Word of God must become corrupt." This is true for all of the colleges and schools, including our theological cemeteries, where they have far drifted from the scriptural standards. And this explains how denominations go apostate. It normally starts in the colleges and the seminaries. Noah Webster said education is useless without the Bible. The Bible was America's basic textbook in all fields. God's word contained in the Bible has furnished all necessary rules to direct our conduct. How much clearer can that be? Our school campuses and our textbooks are a battleground. Education today is certainly a battleground. Our universities and schools in South Africa are full of riots and demonstrations and huge chaos on a daily basis. Freedom of speech, freedom of conscience is under fire on school and university campuses for what was meant to be a free marketplace of ideas, where iron sharpens iron, and we see this in our textbooks too. There's a big difference in education and indoctrination. By the way, I don't expect you to recognize where this university is, but this is the first university in South Africa founded by the elder brother of Andrew Murray. Reverend John Murray founded this university back in the 1850s, and the Stellenbosch University had one of the finest theological seminaries in all of Africa, a place of revival back in the 1860 revival and so on. But has this ever been hijacked? Those of you who've read some of the missionary stories of those who went to China have probably heard of foot binding. The Chinese had this weird fetish idea that women had to have small feet, and they therefore bound their feet from the time they were born so that they would have very small, like hooves instead of feet. And on the left you can see what happens to a foot-binded person, and on the right what normal feet should look like. This is mutilation, it's torture. What they felt they had to do was force and compact the person's foot to form not what was natural, but what they thought would be better. This is absolutely disgraceful, and of course missionaries were heavily involved in fighting against this. In Africa we find no end of body piercing, tattooing, lip stretching, ear stretching. You would not believe the garbage going out there. Actually you would. It's not come to your shores.
That's right.
Then there's also head binding. We have tribes in Africa that actually believe it's better to bind heads from early to force the head to grow in an elongated fashion, because they somehow think that's the idea of beauty. So you get foot binding, you get head binding, and in the West you get mind binding, thought binding. And what we're going to engage in today is thought crimes against the New World Order. A lot of people are just not that observant. I mean, most people couldn't notice the elephant right behind them. We're all trying to get some picture of some buck in front or so. And you can just imagine this tour guide saying, now if you look over there, far in distance, just under a tree, you might see a lion. And they don't see the one right next to them. He's looking, thinking, that's my brother. All education is inherently religious, because it presents a certain perspective and a selection of history and values and practices, and it prescribes a worldview. It presents a selection. It doesn't present history, facts, it presents a selection, and often a distortion. Instead of education, teaching people how to think critically, we now mostly have indoctrination, teaching students what to think. Repeat after me, and so on. Education, though, is not the learning of facts, but the training of the mind to think. I praise God that my first history teacher in high school, I was brought up in Bulawayo, Rhodesia, and my first teacher in high school was Mr. Rhys Davies, who also happened to be a member of Parliament. Because back then, 1970s, members of Parliament had to have a real job. They weren't paid to be members of Parliament or to be mayors or town councillors. That was an honorary position from a person who'd been successful in life and who now donated his time for the service of the community. It wasn't a means to get rich. And so the cabinet ministers got a full-time salary, but the members of Parliament did not. And in fact, he even had to pay his own way to get up to Salisbury. They'd give him a free train ticket, not a free plane ticket. So to get from Bulawayo to Salisbury, if he wanted to fly, he'd have to pay for it. He got no remuneration even for that. Anyway, my history teacher, Mr. Rhys Davies, in a first history lesson in high school said, beware the victor's version. Wartime propaganda morphs into peacetime textbooks. Governments lie. Think. Think outside the box. Don't ever regurgitate to me the textbook. Textbooks are packs of lies. You need to ask why. Think. What's the context? What's the reason? Every action is a reaction to something that caused it. There has to be a cause. Don't just accept the textbook. You know, he said, that the British government is lying about us now, here in Rhodesia. Why would you believe what the British have to say when they're talking about the First and Second World War? We know they lied about the Anglo-Boer War, which was all about gold and diamonds, and they claimed they were concerned about the franchise for Uitlanders. You know that they lied about, and he went through. We fought for Britain in the First and Second World War, and the Malayan conflicts and so on. And now that we're being attacked by terrorists, they're supporting the terrorists, sanctioning us. Indeed, it was actually worse than that. We need to get people to think outside the box, to ask questions. Sadly, today what we're getting is indoctrination. Schools seem to think that teaching yoga and transcendental meditation and other mindless garbage is something to do with education today. Now, just have a look at some of the modern textbooks. Where did the idea of the government being involved in education come from? Karl Marx, Marxist Manifesto, Communist Manifesto, 1848. 1848, the first advocation of the state getting involved in writing textbooks, training and licensing teachers, and having compulsory state education for all citizens. You see, until 1848, governments were not interested in education. Education was entirely the realm of the church and missions. The state did not want educated citizens. It was against their interests. The last thing a government wants is educated, intelligent voters who can ask questions and be critical. They don't want these people to say, give me liberty or give me death, and my conscience has kept the word of God. No, that's the last thing they want. A government being inherently corrupt. You know, poly ticks, politics. Poly, many, ticks, blood-sucking parasites. Politics, many blood-sucking parasites. And so the Communist Manifesto advocated the government getting involved in education. Why? They'd lost the battle. These cursed Christians had opened up schools all over the place, and especially the Protestants making universal literacy common in all Protestant countries. They had to do something about it, and they had to hijack education away from the church and the mission. Who could have thought they would have become so successful to be able to convince the Christians to send their children to them to be brainwashed and indoctrinated? This is a Karl Marx, Friedrich Engels Marxist Manifesto. Compulsory state-controlled education. And John Dewey was the apostle of this, who set up your education system in America, very faithful to the Marxist views. John Dewey. Now, George Orwell, a man who understood communism because he used to be one, he wrote about Animal Farm in 1984, so he gives us an insight to it. Samuel Blumenfeld did a brilliant book on the Trojan horse in American education, National Education Association. Of course, the word education doesn't mean to them what it means to us. Common Core, if this looks somewhat communist and subversive, it's because it is. I'm sure you've all seen the indoctrination film, absolutely essential viewing for anybody who has any children or grandchildren and is concerned for the next generation. Indoctrination is brilliant, and it points out that what we're getting now is school indoctrination. When the kids are getting on the yellow bus, they are going to boredom and absolute mind-numbing, just like the head binding in Africa or the foot binding in China. You have got brain binding, thought binding in America and throughout the whole world where secular humanist education is on the go. You think you're sending a child to read, write and do maths, but what you don't realize is you're allowing the enemy to conform and indoctrinate your child to the lies of the state. So according to atheists, this picture on the left of a family going to church and teaching your children about God is child abuse. However, teaching your children to twerk, whatever the hell that is, at sexually explicit gay parades is normal. This is what we're dealing with right now. Perversion is normal, and God-fearing child raising is now child abuse. And here's this parent saying, maybe it's time we homeschool when he sees his kid burning an American flag at the Christmas tree. Well, they should have picked it up a little earlier. Come away from the window. You don't want to be a child left behind you. Well, yes, I'd love to be left behind from this kind of mind-numbing indoctrination garbage that's going on in our schools. And this isn't a joke. I mean, they're literally creating zombies out there. If we are to avoid a future of cultural separatism in this country, it's imperative that we end the systemic indoctrination of teachers and students. Remember, it's not just the students being indoctrinated, the teachers are too. The teachers aren't just the villains in this. In many cases, the teachers are the victims. They're also the products of it. They don't know any better. They might even think what they're doing is helping the kids. Who knows? You start to Google, school makes me, just 3 words, and what pops up quickly? Depressed, suicidal, anxious, crying, feel stupid, sick, so tired, sad, tired, so stressed. What does this tell you is going on in the minds of the average kid out there, if these are the first things that just pop up before you've even put the 4th word in? It is actually child abuse. That's what James Dobson said. Sending a child to a government school is child abuse, and I think that's absolutely true. Now you expect this brainwashing in North Korea and Red China, obviously. You expect this in a communist country. What you don't expect this is in your neighborhood, but I'm afraid it's here, without a shadow of a doubt. Thanks to Karl Marx, thanks to the 48ers, thanks to John Dewey. Education is not the learning of facts, but the training of the mind to think, and I would add, critically. Don't believe a thing until you get the evidence and it lines up with Scripture. So, just one example, 36 pages on Islam in a world history textbook and half a page on Christianity. Does that sound balanced? If you go to the Epcot Center down in Disney World Annex in Orlando, they've got this golf ball type journey through progress through the ages. Not a word of Christianity, Gutenberg inventing the printing press, the universities, nothing of Christianity. Nothing about Florence Nightingale, nursing, nothing about that whatsoever. What you get is they glorify the pagan cultures of Babylon and Egypt, Persia, and then they have the Dark Ages, which is when the Roman Empire fell. They now think that's the Dark Ages, when Europe got Christianized. But then a voice thunders in darkness. But all was not lost. Islam kept learning alive. You've got to be kidding. Islam kept learning alive. How? By burning 6 million scrolls and books and manuscripts in the Alexandria Library? You know, the burning of whole libraries might create some light, but it hardly preserves knowledge. This is the kind of mindlessness you get from Disney. So you can have any kind of club at school, and next thing you know, you've got Hope and Change and the ACLU, the Anti-Christ Lawsuit Union, coming along to prosecute, because in the name of diversity, they've got to crush any dissent to New World Order secular humanism. And then you get these Christians who say, oh, we'll send little Billy to government school so he can be a missionary there. Oh yeah, well, look how well that's turning out. Quite aside from the fact that he's not in charge of the class, the teacher is, and the teacher's got a lot more education than little Billy has, and there's no way that this is going to turn out well, and it hasn't turned out well. This is not a joke. They really are sucking the brains out and crushing the creativity of our young kids. When you get done with you, not only will you have a slim chance of finding work, but you won't be able to think for yourself to save your life. And in fact, that's true. In our country, we have got, just for example, you may think this is a ridiculous joke, but I'm sad to say it's true. In my city, Cape Town, where I live, our suburb, Pinelands, we've got the Old Mutual, which is a big insurance company. They've got 8,000 employees there. They have employed there high school English teachers and high school maths teachers. What for? The high school English teachers are teaching remedial English to MBA graduates who are employed there, Master of Business Administration, who don't know English. They're teaching them high school English. Now these are university graduates with MBAs. The maths teacher is teaching computational skills, how to add and subtract, that sort of thing, for their chartered accountants. People have got a chartered accountant's degree from the University of Cape Town and Witwatersrand, which used to be some of the greatest universities in the world. Modelled on Oxford, for example. UCT was set up with the money of Cecil Rhodes for that purpose. Today, you've got chartered accountants who cannot add or subtract, and they need a high school teacher to teach them. So we say, why do you employ these people? Affirmative action. We must. But certain racial protests. Well, couldn't you at least employ the ones who can count and spell? We would, if we could find them. The governments, universities are churning out people who, the vast, vast, vast majority of which cannot even, they have no chance of getting a job, except if they're forced to adopt a certain amount of racial quotas, and then the person's on staff, but he's actually nothing but a drain on the company. And you wonder why prices of everything's going up. It's pretty bad, but in my country, they did a study a while ago and found 85% of university enrollments fail to persevere or fail to pass at the end. So that means 85% of our university entrance people shouldn't even be there. But of course, all getting subsidized with government, this and the other, our tax monies and so on. Education is a racket. It's a financial scam. Now, you expect it in Red China, but they might even be doing a slightly better job than some of our secular universities over here. Your universities in America are actually toxic. The problem is not people being uneducated. The problem is that they're educated just enough to believe what they've been taught and not educated enough to question what they have been taught. Modern education is creating people smart enough to follow orders and repeat what they've been told, and dumb enough to think that this makes them smarter than everyone else. The marketization of higher education and the student as consumer, this is a fact. They are selling an image of this piece of paper, this degree, as some kind of magic carpet that's going to get you into the life you want and get you the jobs you want and get you the income you want, which is going to get you the lifestyle you want. And it's a scam. Just like most of the other advertising. They're offering far more than it's delivering. They're giving a false impression. And this is not about education anymore. This is about making a lot of money, not just from the student and the parent, but from the taxpayer. For this huge, colossal fraud of this indoctrination gulag system. People can come in with all kinds of creativity that's crushed, as was shown in the film clips last night. Forget evolution, we're into devolution right now. Things are not getting better and better and higher, it's going down, down, down. The definition of stupid is knowing the truth, seeing the truth, but still believing the lies. And I must say, as somebody who's traveled to 36 countries, ministered in 4 continents, America must be the most indoctrinated, brainwashed, politicized, and misinformed country on the planet right now. I would have used to say that for the Soviet Union. But America's eclipsed that since. They used to have a joke in Russia. They had 2 newspapers, Pravda, which means truth, and Izvestia meaning news. In Russia, they say there's nothing true in Pravda and there's nothing new in Izvestia. And today, the Pravda of today is more reliable a source of information than your Slime magazine, Useless News and World Report, Newspeak, forget about the Bolshevik Broadcasting Corporation or the Clinton News Network and so on. So, an honest answer to a child saying, why do I have to go to school, would be, so you can be molded into a state-approved, homogeneous drone that cannot think outside the prescribed consensus. You will learn to repeat information instead of how to think for yourself, so that you don't become a threat to the status quo. When you graduate, you will get a job, pay your taxes, in order to perpetuate the corporate system of indentured servitude. How many years does it take for the average college graduate to pay off their student loans? It's bizarre. You could have grandchildren by the time you are able to pay off your student loans. This is really slavery. And now we have the dumbest generation in history. I heard R.C. Sproul say, we could be in the dumbest generation in history. And he said, don't let the computers and the technology fool you. You used to have to be able to debate in Latin as an entrance qualification to get to university. Now you have remedial English in university. It's staggering to think how dumb our societies have been. If you just look at the quality of sermons of the Puritans, deep, involved, intricate, referring to obscure characters in the scriptures that our average theological graduate today wouldn't even be able to identify. And the average congregation in Britain and America back in the 1800s, 1600s, were more intelligent, better read, more able to think and debate than the average person today. And you just have to look at the kind of idiots these people vote for to recognize how dumb the society has gotten. How on earth do gangsters like the Clintons or criminals like Obama manage to get elected to serious countries? So there's a deliberate dumbing down of America, and I think Samuel Blumenfeld described this, particularly the look-see, look-say method and dropping out the whole idea of phonics and so on. You've got a deliberate dumbing down of your country, and of course they're doing it in my country now too. 2,400 years ago, Plato said, strange times are these in which we live, when old and young are taught falsehoods in school, And the person that dares to tell the truth is called at once a lunatic and a fool. Is that not true? Aristotle said tolerance and apathy are the last virtues of a dying society. Tolerance and apathy. Is that not what we are having pushed upon us morning, noon, and night? We see 7 pillars of ignorance in our schools in South Africa. This is what one cartoon put it in Cape Town. Ideology, which is communism. Incompetence. Nepotism. I'm sure you wouldn't have that around here. Unaccountability, laziness, arrogance, and corruption. Those are the 7 pillars of liberal education as we find it in our universities today in South Africa. And one of the worst organizations on the planet in terms of education is UNESCO. We come across the United Nations educational, scientific, and cultural organization all over the place. They provide free textbooks to governments all over Africa. I've sat with heads of states in Africa speaking about the need to reform the textbooks. They say, oh no, we can't do it. We get our textbooks from UNESCO, free. Did I mention free? We get them free. Yes, but it's teaching evolutionism, it's teaching perversion, it's promoting homosexuality and so on and so forth. No, but they're free. Yes, but do you understand that it's destroying the next generation? The philosophy of this classroom in this generation will be the philosophy of government in the next generation. But UNESCO provides them free. Heads of state talk to me like that, dead serious. Presidents of countries. Okay, so let's look at some of these textbooks. World history. So what's the most important thing in world history? Apparently the Roman or Greek Empire, which I presume these ruins represent. Forget the cathedrals of Christianity, forget the hospitals, forget rockets and jet aircraft, just some Roman ruins. That's world history. Or the Taj Mahal. What's the Taj Mahal? It's a tomb for the favorite wife of this Khan who had something like 5,000 to 6,000 wives and concubines. And so Princess Diana has been posed in front here saying, this is a monument to true love. True love from some serial rapist, kidnapping child abuser, who was a slave owner, who massacred vast amounts of people. And when he got this tomb built for his favorite wife, he had all the right hands of the 15,000 artisans and carpenters and stonemasons chopped off, so that they could never make such a lovely building. This is a monument to true love. This is now symbolic of world history. Of course, there's no greater building in the world than the Taj Mahal. And you can't think of the cathedrals or anything like that. And then, who are the characters on here? Well, of course, one of the 5 most important people in the history of the world has got to be communist Nelson Mandela. I mean, nothing's more important than burning people alive with tires and blowing them up. And who are these other characters? Looks like Julius Caesar. Queen Elizabeth I, she deserves to be there. Not so sure, but I think that's meant to be Cleopatra. But anyway, is this really representative of world history? It gets better. This is a Christian school textbook. World history, the pinnacle of human civilization is American B-17 flying fortresses, saturation bombing cities in Germany, flattening entire cities with 1,000 bomber raids, destroying cities like Cologne, cathedrals, museums, monument, irreplaceable art, the country of the Reformation, flattening Bremen, Dresden, Berlin. This is the pinnacle of world history for a Christian school textbook. This war crime, incinerating 2 million people in Germany, civilians? Really? We want to glamorize saturation bombing? Which idiot chose this as the cover picture for a world history book, for a Christian textbook? Okay, DK is hardly Christian, but here you can see what's more important in Tutankhamun, and Buddha, and Gandhi, and Mandela, and Martin Luther King. Oh, well, there's Queen Elizabeth I. I suppose there's somebody vaguely useful. This now is history. Then you get the Americans. Well, when you think of Americans, who could be more important than Martin Luther King? And Ronald Reagan fortunately made it, but he's just the bottom left. Of course, you've got Franklin Delano Roosevelt. You know, I was at Summit Ministries. You know Summit Ministries, David Noble,
Colorado.
Understand the Times, outstanding. Well, David Noble had just given a lecture just about 9-10 years ago, and so Obama was in his 2nd year of being president. And after this presentation on worldviews and politics, one person said, Obama's the worst president in the history of America. And I said, it may turn out to be so, but he's only been in office 2 years so far. Can I suggest to you, think Jimmy Carter. In the 4 years of Jimmy Carter's administration, 13 countries were deliberately betrayed to communism, including Nicaragua, who had been a good ally of America, including Rhodesia, my home country, under Mugabe, who for 38 years bludgeoned and raped and murdered his way across our country of Rhodesia, turned it in from the breadbasket into the basket case. Oh, let's not forget the Ayatollah Khomeini.
That's right.
Jimmy Carter's highest foreign policy goal, aside from betraying Rhodesia into the hands of Mugabe's communists, was to betray the Shah of Iran, which is one of the best allies America had in the Middle East, into the hands of the Ayatollahs. And that story's not over yet. So, and I then point out, in 8 years of Ronald Reagan, no country started communism. The country started to be freed from communism. And the Berlin Wall came down, and the Iron Curtain collapsed. The Cold War was won, and millions of people lived because of Ronald Reagan. But Jimmy Carter, he made the world worse. While I'm talking, David Noble walks up and he puts his hand on my shoulder and he says, Peter, you're wrong. The worst president in America's history, in terms of damage done, is certainly Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Betraying 1/3 of the world's population in the hands of communism, betraying all those countries in Eastern and Central Europe behind the Iron Curtain with the Altar Green, saving Stalin's Soviet Union from destruction through the Lend-Lease campaign and all the rest of it, and removing the two biggest opponents of communism, Germany in Europe and Japan in Asia, the two forces that were preventing communism from taking over Eastern Europe or China. We removed and enabled Stalin's communist empire to expand. Not to mention Truman, of course, giving North Korea to Soviets, which started a problem that hasn't ended yet either. But anyway, so he said, FDR. From the back of the class, someone shouted, but it all began with Lincoln! And we thought, he's right. So Abraham Lincoln is on here. Well, amazingly, George Washington suddenly features amongst one of the Americans worthy of note on the cover. Who knows who the others are, aside from communist, perjurer, plagiarist, sexual pervert, Michael King, called Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., not that he is a doctor, not that he's a reverend, not that his name was Martin Luther King, Michael King, but anyway, who cares? He's an idol of the New World Order. Now, in your country, there's a war going on against history. You can see the importance of history because you have communists in a country working hard to take down the statues of some of the most noble, honorable, God-fearing Christian leaders that your country ever had, like Robert E. Lee, a man who was respected by his enemies. But not anymore, because the people today don't have the honor that once was around. Extraordinary. George Orwell, 1984, says every record has been destroyed or falsified, every book rewritten, every picture has been repainted, every statue and street building has been renamed, every date has been altered, and the process is continuing day by day, minute by minute. History has stopped. Nothing exists except an endless present in which the party is always right. Remember the book by Alexander Solzhenitsyn? We never make mistakes. Because the Communist Party is infallible. Everything faded into mist. The past was erased. The erasure was forgotten, the lie became truth. George Orwell knew what he was talking about. He had visited Moscow. He had seen what communism did. Now, in response to some of what I've said, what hands can the left play? Racist, homophobe, misogynist, Islamophobe. Are there any other cards in the hand? Not many. So, to understand the impact of textbooks on society, we need to understand how Marxists are subverting our churches and our society. Karl Marx declared the first battlefield is a rewriting of history. And his disciples have been super busy rewriting history, especially through Hollywood. This is a true story, despite the real events. The generation now coming out of Western schools is unable to distinguish good from bad. Even those words, good and bad, are unacceptable. This results in impaired thinking ability. Alexander Solzhenitsyn is a real prophet to our time. Now, if you can look past these silly girls in the foreground, this is an English school, by the way. What is on the wall of this English classroom?
Che Guevara.
Communist, terrorist Nelson Mandela, Che Guevara, dirty, unwashed, mass-murdering communist thug, who boasted that he had killed 7,000 people, including women and children, by the way, in cold blood. And Martin Luther King Jr., or shall we say Michael King, perjurer, plagiarist, and pervert. But anyway, what does any of that have to do with education? Nothing, but it's got a lot to do with indoctrination. That's a British school. You would have expected King Alfred the Great, Queen Elizabeth I, Oliver Cromwell. No. Those are, that's past. This is new heroes. Marxists aim to demoralize their targeted victims by psychological warfare, what an army we call psyops. They use guilt manipulation. They vilify the victims and they victimize the villains. You've heard of victim blaming. Somehow or another, it's always the victim's fault. Like if a woman gets raped, it's her fault. Why was she dressed like that? Why was she in that part of town? Why was she there at that time? Wait a minute, how does the victim suddenly become the villain? In South Africa, farmers are murdered. They didn't have enough no trespassing signs on their property. Dead serious. These are the things people come out with. There's no end of blaming the victim. And then there's politics of guilt and pity, which R.J. Rossini wrote a book on that, politics of guilt and pity, seeking to undermine Christianity and nationalism. Pretty obvious when you were in the Soviet Union, agitation, propaganda. The Soviets were brilliant. I mean, you can kind of recognize the communist propaganda, which from our perspective now, about 80 years later, it looks pretty primitive. But your propaganda is a lot more sophisticated today on CNN. And yes, you get the message. They basically, what's that hammer and sickle doing? The hammer's bashing down the head of a farm owner. Modern society, I'm quoting from Alexander Solzhenitsyn again, modern society is hypnotized by socialism. It is prevented by socialism from seeing the mortal danger it is in. Once the greatest dangers of all is that you've lost all sense of danger. You cannot even see where it's coming from. As it moves swiftly towards you, socialism of any type leads to a total destruction of the human spirit. To destroy a people, you must first sever their roots. Why are they attacking your monuments? Why are they attacking your statues of honorable Christian people? Well, you've got to sever people's roots. And many people aren't reading the books. But the monuments could be a reminder of something. You've got to remove those too. Again, quoting from Alexander Solzhenitsyn. In keeping silent about evil, in burying it so deep within us that no sign of it appears on the surface, we are implanting it and it will rise 1,000-fold in the future. When we neither punish nor reproach evildoers, we are ripping the foundations of justice from beneath new generations. In our country, the lie is not just a moral category, it is a pillar of the state. The state is built on lies. The timid, civilized world has found nothing with which to oppose the sudden revival of bare-faced barbarity other than concessions and smiles. You have got savages like Antifa trashing your universities, physically attacking people, destroying your monuments, and what is the state doing with this obvious Marxist terrorist organization, Antifa? Under the duties required in the Ninth Command, the Westminster Larger Catechism lists, this is for our do not bear false witness, Ninth Command, the duty of preserving and promoting the truth. Truth, by the way, is the first piece of the armor we read about in Ephesians 6. Put on the belt of truth. Truth. The duty to stand for the truth and to do so from the heart. The duty to speak the truth and only the truth in matters of judgment and justice. The duty to speak the truth at all times. This, by the way, is our Parliament in Cape Town. The duty to study and practice everything true, noble, lovely, and of good report. I'm still quoting from Westminster Catechism. Under sins forbidden in the Ninth Command, the Westminster standards include the sin of giving false evidence. Gee, that's not just a guilt of your news media, it's a guilt of your school textbook writers. False evidence. The sin of lying. The sin of concealing the truth. The sin of misconstruing intentions. The sin of exaggerating minor faults. The sin of perverting the truth to wrong meaning. That's all quoting from the Westminster Standards. From the 1600s. This goes back to the 1640s. You see, biblical truth is relevant to this day because human nature has not changed. Truth is truth, even if no one believes it. A lie is a lie, even if everyone believes it. It is better to be divided by truth than united in sin. It is better to speak the truth that hurts than falsehoods that comfort. It's better to be hated for telling a lie, hated for telling the truth, than liked for telling a lie. It's better to stand alone with the truth than to be wrong with the multitude. What was the motto, battle cry of Jan Hus, the Reform of Prague? Truth conquers. That which can be destroyed by the truth should be. Some people say, you mustn't bring out these truths about Martin Luther King Jr. or Mandela or whatever. It could destroy their respect. Well, if truth can destroy them, it should be. Why do we want to build a life on life? Now, I just saw the film once. I can't remember its name. There was one of these Batman films where Harvey Dent, the criminal, was lifted up as the hero. And Batman went along with it because he thought to comfort the people, thinking that this evil man had actually been a hero who had saved the city. And the whole city turned to kind of like a Harvey Dent worship. You remember the name of that film?
Dark Knight.
Dark Knight, right. Okay. And then you saw the negative results of believing that lie. I think that's the same thing that's happened in our countries, that we have made heroes of villains. And I'm not going to censor myself to comfort the ignorance of many. I read old books because I would rather learn from those who built civilization up than from those who tore it down and are tearing it down now. This is the foundation of homeschooling. A good library, great books. Old books are the best. You can lead a man to knowledge, but you cannot make him think. I need to think. You must never tolerate evil. For first, if you tolerate evil, you then embrace it. Then you hail it as being good. Then it becomes unlawful to do what was actually good. I've seen it in my country. We fought a long, hard, tough war. 26 years war against communism. At the end, we had a negotiated settlement. We had won the war. We defeated the Cubans, defeated the Russians, defeated SWAT with the ANC. We had won, and the Berlin Wall had come down, the Iron Curtain had collapsed, the Soviet Union collapsed, the Cubans had withdrawn from Angola, and we were victorious. And from a position of strength, our government, foolishly, I believe, I wasn't a supporter of it, but our government in South Africa chose to release Mandela from prison, unban the ANC and the Southern Province Party, and work about a negotiated settlement that they thought would end international sanctions, enable us to play football and rugby and be involved in the World Cups and the Olympics. And we could have a healthy economy in a country based on laws. And part of this was to pretend that our communist terrorist enemy were actually noble, honorable freedom fighters who could keep their agreements and so on and so forth. But Karl Marx said, to tell the truth is a petty bourgeois habit, but to lie convincingly is a sign of superior intelligence. Lenin said, treaties are like pie crusts, they're made to be broken. Why do we even try to sign agreements with professional liars who think that lying is an art form to be cultivated? And so now you've got a lot of South Africans singing Nelson Mandela's praises and acting like he is the father of the nation. He's a communist, Marxist terrorist. A wife-beating serial adulterer, and a whole lot of other things. I mean, I'm not here to talk about him. But the point is, if you're going to do a Harvey Dent, let's just worship the criminal, it'll have negative effects. My sister posted this picture a while ago saying, I wouldn't change my children for the world, but I wish I could change the world for my children. Well, that is my desire too, to change the world, to leave a better world for my children. My firstborn daughter, Andrea. Well, of course, I've taught her to love all things, knowledge. My daughter, Daniela, who is our artist, and every night, highlights of the day was reading time, devotions, singing, praying, and I taught my children history. Now, my daughter, my oldest daughter, Andrea, had no problem with me crossing out things in a textbook and marking different dates or correcting things. And she had no problem, but my second daughter, Daniela, was horrified. Dad, how can the textbook be wrong? Well, governments produce textbooks, and while this is meant to be from a Christian homeschooling curriculum provider, they've obviously got this wrong. Well, next question is, well, Dad, how do you know that you're right? It's a good question. Well, as it so happens, I was brought up in Rhodesia. I knew Ian Smith, the Prime Minister of Rhodesia. I doubt that the person who wrote this textbook had ever been to Rhodesia, probably hasn't even been to Africa, and has just accepted the propaganda and CNN and so on, and this is found its way into a Christian textbook. But How do you know about Mozambique? Well, I worked in Mozambique for years. I was in Rwanda. I walked knee-deep through the corpses in Rwanda. I know what was going on in Angola. I fought there, served there. I knew Jonas Savimbi, the Unity Freedom Fighter leader, and so on. And you could continue with so many different things. I've taught my children the love of nature, climbing mountains, how to shoot straight. Family that shoots together stays together. And of course my children love music and all the different arts, and we can teach, and our back garden is like a playground. And my father fought all 6 years of the Second World War in the 8th Army, mostly in the 8th Army under Field Marshal Montgomery, for example, North Africa, and most of it in Italy. My father's traditional weapon, 25-pounder, is a bombardier. Take my children to my base, 6th South African Infantry, where I was trained, and this is the chapel where we started the Frontline Fellowship mission. That's a lot younger me. We've gone to the battle sites, like Battle of Blood River. Take my children on missions, like across the Namib Desert, up into Angola, Zambia, ministering. Here my son is meeting General Ronnie Shikapasha. Now this is a character. General Ronnie Shikapasha was the head of the Air Force, crippled in a car accident, told he'd never walk again. His wife got converted. He got converted. He got healed. He became Minister of Information, Minister of Home Affairs, Minister of Foreign Affairs. And we were able to meet him and to let my son meet leaders in the world like these. We go to museums. I do guided tours of museums like the Huguenot Monument Museum, special, like this is the Livingston 200. We launched the whole Livingston 200 on the 200th anniversary of the birth of David Livingstone, the best friend Africa ever had. Here at Victoria Falls at the 200th anniversary of David Livingstone's birth. My daughter Daniela has become a singer who's sung all over the world in Cape Town the Cape Town Youth Choir as far as Riga and the Choir Olympics. My wife teaching our children quilting on this occasion, and some of our school books and workbooks that our children work through. My second daughter Daniela got national colours in ice skating and has represented South Africa in Boston at Worlds and in synchronized ice skating in Italy and France. And she's an ice skating coach too. My first son, third child, Christopher, was born with kidney failure. He's a miracle child, got his mother's kidney. We've taught him all sorts of skills, and he got his national colours in karate, and he's represented our country overseas in 4 international events, including in America, Germany, Switzerland. And he's come back with bronze medals from Switzerland with his mother's kidney. He's meant to be he could be in the Transplants Olympics, but he wanted to be in normal to get to the top. Our youngest son, Calvin, he's the athlete of the family, everything from fencing, hockey. In fact, even though he's doing his 12th grade right now by homeschooling, he's coaching in a local school in hockey and water polo and all that sort of thing. So these are my children. This is the reason why I'm interested in history books and school textbooks. And some of the projects my children I've been involved in is producing a website on the Bible and animals, and social media sites on We Love God's Animals and Wonderful Wildlife. We're real animal rights activists, and to show that Christians have a real reason. When I'm with my vegan, lesbian, animal rights activist friends out there, and they're out there chanting, "Animals matter!" Why? Because animals matter. I say, well, I've got Bible verses, I've got the doctrine of creation and stewardship, a good man is kind to his animals, the wicked are cruel to theirs. What do you have? I mean, if you just believe in evolution, then, you know, we all evolved slime, there's no right or wrong, there's no heaven and hell. You don't have any basis, aside from sentimentality, for your animal rights campaigns. I've got a scriptural foundation in creation and stewardship. Anyway, so we're ministering amongst those people too. David Livingstone, one of our great heroes. Our mission house is called Livingstone House. I've got first editions of all his books. Wow. And I've made a major life study on this great missionary. So our whole vision is smash cultural Marxism. We want to transform our culture through textbooks. And I've been writing textbooks like Church History Manual, A Christian History of Africa, keep upgrading, I'm lecturing on these in Bible colleges and so on. But I start them for homeschoolers. And Victorious Christians have changed the world. I'm sick and tired of lifting up all these false gods, these idols of the New World Order, that we've got to worship people who hated Christ. So here I've got 32 biographies going from Perpetua to Mary Celeste, 20 centuries of Christians, so that we can learn world history from examples of excellence. Great Essential Reformation, one of our most popular books, now in its second expanded edition, dealing with 16 great reformers of the 16th century. Our most popular book ever, The Great Essential Missions. This has been over 20,000 copies in print so far. This book, The Great Essential Missions, has got 19 biographies on 19 missionaries of the 19th century. I believe we learn by examples of excellence, like sketches from South African history. Our history is under attack. This book got me a death threat fatwa from Muslim radical terrorists. Slavery, Terrorism, Islam, Historical Roots and Contemporary Threat. When it first came out in 2005, well, I then doubled it in the next edition, trebled it in the third edition, because if they liked it so much, I thought it must have hit target, and so we keep working on it. The important thing is we should reclaim our campuses for Christ. We do ministry into university campuses, but we don't send our children there. We go there as missionaries. Understand the Bible, working our way through every book of the Bible is part of our Reformation 500 campaign. You shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. Marxists employ double standards to enable them to always play the victim. They're always the victim. Even when they're genociding millions of Christians in the Soviet Union, they're somehow the victim. While they demonize the opponents of Marxism, anybody who opposes Marxism will be demonized. And Hollywood obviously loves Marxism. They've never made a film exposing the communist persecution of Christians, the killing of tens of millions of Christians in the gulags of the Soviet Union, or in Mao Zedong's second phase of the revolution. They don't care about victims of Marxism. This is a true story. The facts are true, the names are true, but we've changed the facts in order to demonize the victims and to victimize the villains. When they say inspired by true events, what do they mean? Some of this film might have happened. Most of it's lies. Along with demonizing their opponents, Marxists seek to promote hero worship of the idols of the New World Order. For example, Vladimir Lenin talked about idol worship. You go into Moscow and what do you see? This grotesque, modeled on Egyptian type pyramid, House of the Dead, and they've got in there the corpse. Well, actually it's not much of the old Lenin because his fingers fell off and the ears fell off and those fell off. So it's mostly plaster Paris because they were actually very shoddy in their embalming. But every May Day, on the 1st of May, the Soviet armies, the Red Armies, would march past, and the leaders of the Politburo would be standing above the bones of Lenin to see the march past. The symbolism, the occultic, statist hero worship, Caesar worship of this Marxist mass-murdering terrorist thug is just quite grotesque. And communism marched on, and it actually managed, thanks to FDR and Churchill, to conquer and rule over 1/3 of the world's population at the height. And of course, terrorized us with everything from possible nuclear annihilation onwards. However, by God's grace, the time came when here the people are lining up to see their God. But you know, on the other side of Red Square, there's St. Basil's Cathedral. And it's one of the only churches that survived the purges. There were 50,000 church buildings in Russia in 1917, the time of the Bolshevik Revolution. By Operation Barbarossa in 1941, there were not even 200 congregations, church buildings left open in all of the Soviet Union. They closed down over 49,000 or destroyed them. But this was one that was left because it was very public, prominent. So this was the one propaganda, the only church open in Moscow in 1941. Anyway, so St. Basil's Cathedral, when it comes to Easter Sunday, the minister asked, "Where is he?" And people respond, "He is not here." "Where is he?" "He is not here." "Where is he?" "He is not here." And then the third time he shouts out, "Christ is risen." And the whole congregation responds, "He is risen indeed." And you can imagine his poor soul on the other side of Red Square, looking over his shoulder thinking, our God's dead. The Christian's God's alive. This, of course, was the death knell of communism. Communism has been thoroughly defeated in Russia. The Soviet Union is no more. Tens of thousands of idols of Lenin and Marx and all the others have gone, even as far as Addis Ababa in Ethiopia. One of the most important books I ever came across was Herbert Schlossenberg's Idols for Destruction, where he points out that the key element to gospel preaching is always destroying the idols. When people are converted, they destroy their idols. I've decided to follow Jesus, no turning back. They burn their bridges or their boats. Cortez's kind of example. They have a fire service, so to speak. They destroy their idols. So, do we have any problem with idols today? I mean, are there any Hollywood idols, sex idols, pop idols, political idols? Do you have any idolatry in your society today? Have you noticed how, in the Bible, God decrees this was a good king, or this was a bad king, this was an evil king, or this king did evil, and so on. But somehow in America, everybody who becomes a president enters the pantheon of the gods. And suddenly they're good, not just good, they're great. In fact, every single American president somehow is a star. And in God's eyes, the kings of Israel and of Judah were good or bad. They either did good in the eyes of the Lord or bad. Do you think God could say of your presidents, he did good in the eyes of the Lord? I mean, really, all of them? Idolatry has consequences. When you can see people putting the Christian flag under the state flag, talk about gross idolatry. That is shocking flag etiquette. That is disgusting subservience to the state. The kingdom of God is bigger than the United States of America. It'll last longer. It'll be going on long after America's gone. And it always should be superior to. We would never put our state flag above a Christian flag. And of course now you've got the gay flag there, just waiting for it to be above. Idols for destruction. This is what we need to be involved in, is fighting idols. Now, can I suggest as a guest to your country, a visitor, that Lincoln is to me an obvious idol of America. And I don't see why Abraham Lincoln is so revered by you. What got me thinking is, I noticed the Cubans worshipped Abraham Lincoln. And do you know the Communist Party USA's patron saint has always been Abraham Lincoln. This is Communist Party USA, 1938, I think. And notice the friendship of the peoples of the USA and the USSR. And who's top and front and center? Abraham Lincoln. Down here, bottom left, Lenin. Bottom right, Stalin. You see, Lincoln is the idol of the Communist Party of the United States. There's books out on Lincoln and Marx. Do you know Lincoln and Marx were friends in correspondence? They corresponded with one another. The book Lincoln's Marxist, which I acquired while over here, in fact it was Lloyd Sprinkle who first introduced me to this whole interesting connection between Marx and Lincoln. In fact, Karl Marx was the best PR agent for Lincoln during the war between the states. He was the one writing articles in Europe, giving the Lincoln case against many people who are horrified as how can America be waging war against its people and burning farms and waging war against civilians. Interestingly, a lot of the Republican Party initially was made up of 48ers. In 1848, Marxist Manifesto came out, Communist Manifesto, there were revolutions at every capital in Europe. They all failed, many got shot, hung, guillotined, whatever. And a whole lot of hundreds of 48ers fled to the United States of America for refuge, because in Europe they were wanted for revolution, treason, all that sort of murder. The Red Republicans were 48ers. The 48ers, the communists from Europe, who came over here, started the Republican Party, which is why the Republican Party to this day still has the red tie, and Democrats have the blue tie. You might think, sure, many people think, but surely the Democrats should have the red tie and the Republicans should have the blue tie. Well, things have changed. They've reversed positions. But the 48ers were stopped in the White House and in Congress, the cabinet and so on of America by Lincoln. Most of the atrocities done by Union forces against the Confederate people in the South and against the bourgeois land-owning elite, obviously coming with their communist propaganda, that's why they did so many atrocities against civilians and burned so many farms and destroyed so much of the South, like Sherman's March to Georgia. These were 48ers. And none of them were ever prosecuted. They kept being promoted up by Lincoln. Lincoln did not deal with his war criminals. Well, that's only part of it. That's why they speak about Karl Marx and Abraham Lincoln are busy with the unfinished revolution. Two sides of the same coin. Lenin was also very much for Soviet Union what Lincoln was to the United States of America. So these people are contemporaries. These people, you've got to see as basically same ideology. Abraham Lincoln was the first inhabitant of the White House not to have been baptized and not to be a church attender or church member. He's the first infidel in the White House. Then they built this idol temple. Now, this is in the 1930s. 1930s, they're building this temple. This is while Mussolini is in charge in Italy, Hitler in Germany, and Stalin in Russia. And so in a time of statism, saved, enshrined forever, are there no Americans disgusted by this blatant idolatry? This is Caesar worship. This is statism. Can I remind you that Christians were not persecuted in the Roman Empire for worshipping Jesus? They were persecuted for refusing to worship Caesar. By the way, you notice what his arms resting on? It's a Roman imperial throne. Notice it's the same symbol that the Roman legions carried under the eagles. This is the symbol of Italy. Italy in 1930s under Mussolini, this was their national symbol. On the planes, the aircraft of the Mussolini's Air Force would be these symbols. The fascist symbol. And they put the fascist symbols under the hands of Honest Abe in this temple, enshrined forever, as in the hearts of his people, for whom he saved a union. I ask you, what is this? Well, some people say war criminal, and there is no question the man was a war criminal because he waged war against his people. Well, what would you say in a hypothetical case where you've got an abusive man, abusive husband, and his wife flees back to her parents' home? The man gets his gang together, they go and burn down her father's house, burn down his barn, kill her father, kill her brother, rape sister, kill her dog, and force her to come back to his home. Would you build a temple in DC and say, he saved the marriage? How on earth is bludgeoning and massacring and killing so many people worthy of a whitewash on this war criminal? To me, Abraham Lincoln is every bit as reprehensible as Vladimir Lenin. Amen. Abraham Lincoln is to America what Lenin is to the Soviet Union, was Mao Zedong is to China, what Mandela is to South Africa, what Fidel Castro is to Cuba, what Winston Churchill is to Britain. An idol. And of course you've got other idols. MLK, of course. And of course, you can see in Cuba, we've got dear old Nelson Mandela Project. In our country, we've got these idols. Talk about idols all over the place. They've got these communist idols. This is like Nebuchadnezzar size. This is plain of Dura, 90-foot high stuff, just unbelievable. And here even, sacrificing pigeons from it. This is just idolatry, ancestor worship of a high order. But as Christians, we're called to destroy idols. The truth does not change because you don't want to hear it. Truth sounds like hate to those who hate the truth. Truth is the new hate speech. During a time of universal deceit, George Orwell said, telling the truth becomes a revolutionary act, a thought crime, treason. You are being lied to. The scriptures teach that Satan is deceiving the nations. And if we find ourselves in full agreement with Hollywood, the United Nations, we need to stop and carefully consider, where have we been deceived? If you agree with the world on the major issues, then Satan has deceived you. Propaganda, the calculated manipulation of public opinion to serve political and ideological interests, is pervasive. Propaganda aims to other people's thinking for them. Propaganda today has moved into prop agenda. What we think is controlled, but also how we think about it. And what we think about. During a World Cup soccer, 3 billion people in the world can be watching a World Cup soccer event simultaneously. I should say simultaneously. 3 billion people worldwide. Phenomenal. And when it comes to Olympics, 2 billion people worldwide. When it comes to a royal wedding in England, I think it's about 1 billion, something. Incredible. Edward Bernays, nephew of Sigmund Freud, and the founder of American propaganda under Woodrow Wilson in the First World War, the conscious and intelligent manipulation of organized habits and opinions of the masses is an important element in democratic society. Those who manipulate this unseen mechanism of society constitute an invisible government, which is the true ruling power of a country. He, by the way, is known as the father of spin. He's the one who started PR. After working for Woodrow Wilson and mobilizing Americans from being anti-war to being pro-war and getting involved in Europe's wars against the instructions of the first president, George Washington, to avoid entangling alliances, do not get involved in Europe's wars. Well, Edward Bernays was appointed by Woodrow Wilson to set up the Committee for Public Information, CPI, which is the first real propaganda agency in the world. I mean, Goebbels and co. studied Bernays to learn how to do propaganda. This man was the father of spin. George Orwell, who had been a communist until he saw reality, wrote Animal Farm, and he wrote 1984. And if you want to understand our society, those two books, those, by the way, were school textbooks when I was at school in Rhodesia, 1984 and George Orwell's Animal Farm. Political language is designed to make lies sound truthful and murder respectable. Collateral damage, strategic bombing offensive, saturation bombing. Nice euphemisms, termination with extreme prejudice, eliminating. Sounds better than mass murder, bombing civilians, stuff like that. The people believe what the media tells them they believe. America is phenomenally brainwashed. It's just staggering. I've had Americans say to me when we've been talking about wars and so on, America's never fought an aggressive war. Seriously. What were you defending in the Philippines? What were you defending in Afghanistan? What are you defending in 100 and something different countries around the world? Are you kidding? I understand that Britain was an empire. Why could Americans and Russians accept that they're the two greatest empires of the present age? It seems that the two biggest empires of the 20th century are in denial that they even are empires. We know what empires are. America's an empire. And it's been an empire since the days of Abraham Lincoln. He turned your republic into an empire. To help some people understand, you say, Star Wars went from republic to empire. That's what you've done. You know the empire. The further a society drifts from the truth, the more they'll hate those who speak the truth. They trivialize the main issues. They ignore the key issues. They focus on side issues. They reinforce deceit with manufactured versions of the past, and boy, are they good at it in Hollywood, inspired by true events. Selective focus, half-truths. If you won't control your mind, someone else will. So the best thing you can do is take your TV out to the shooting range. Strive to be biblically accurate rather than politically correct. I'd rather offend someone into heaven than flatter someone into hell. Better to be slapped with the truth than kissed with a lie. Russian proverb. It's pretty bad when we prefer to get our news from Russia Today than from any American source. Were they more honest than BBC? Intimidation through politically correct censorship and intimidation. Cyberbullying. Crybullying. Boy, your students in America become the world leaders in crybullying. How to be both crybabies and bullies at the same time. They trash curriculums, logic, your reason, constitution, the whole lot. They mobilize hysterical, spiteful, vindictive opposition to silence all dissent. And this isn't just in the world now, it's in the church. It's a Reformed Reconstructionist movement, it's on Reconstructionist radio. They want to be spiteful, vindictive, they even want to boycott Christian Reformation, Future of Christendom conferences, and boycott people who attended, and boycott people who are friends with people who attended, and have fourth degree. This is the tactics of Marxism. Anyone here seen the film Gaslight? Okay, gaslighting. This is psychological abuse, classically portrayed in one of Ingrid Bergman's great films, and Gaslight depicts how this abusive husband, who was actually the murderer of her aunt, but it's quite involved, how he manages to get her to think she's going mad and she's to blame and she's guilty of things being missing, and he manages to get her breaking down in public to reinforce the ideas that his wife's going and saying. Meanwhile, he's deliberately breaking her down. You are being gaslighted. All Christians are under a gaslighting worldwide, America in particular, my country in South Africa. Boy, are we being gaslighted by our state and by our education institutions. Liberal tolerance only works when you agree with them. Anyone daring to express a different opinion will soon find themselves the target of malicious slurs and smear tactics. In an argument, you should deal with the central point. But the worst kinds is ad hominem. When you can't deal with the real issues, and you attack the person. It's like in football. You're meant to kick the ball, you're not meant to kick the player. Smear campaigns are a clear idea that you're dealing with people who can't deal with the issues. The words of his mouth were smoother than butter, but war was in his heart. His words were soft than oil, but they were drawn swords. This, by the way, is our present Communist Party leader in South Africa. He's a Communist Party South Africa member, and he's president of the ANC, and therefore president of South Africa right now. Selling our country to China, just in case you hadn't noticed that flag behind. So the people we're dealing with, to shut us up, they poison wells and they weaponize words. According to liberals, a woman can be a man, but if she gets pregnant, the baby is not human until it's born. But the baby is already gay, straight, or bisexual, but the baby doesn't have an agenda until it decides for itself. Apparently there's 26 genders. I can only find 2, but anyway, they've got more genders now than there are letters in the alphabet. And on university campus, you find the liberal thought police see no opposing views, hear no opposing views, speak no opposing views. And your US Supreme Court now is weaponizing free speech by calling some of it hate speech. How can you determine what a person's motive is? The Lord did not ask Adam and Eve in the garden, why did you do it? What did you do? Why is something God will deal with? We don't know people's hearts and they can lie. So we deal with what? Did you break the law? You know, it's not why you did it. It doesn't matter how many excuses a criminal's got. Who cares? But now free speech is hate speech. Truth is the new hate speech. This is something that's been circulating in British schools. Is your child a far-right extremist? Look for warning signs. Aversion to drugs, alcohol, and pornography. Interest in physical fitness, mental well-being, like my son's. Growing collection of classical literature, guilty. Monogamy, desire to marry and procreate. Boy, are we guilty. Increased time spent outdoors or in nature, seriously guilty in our country. Appreciation of history, nation, and culture, or disdain for modernism and postmodernism. Well, I suppose that means all of us. Is your child a far right-wing extremist? Dead serious. This is the kind of criteria being issued in British education, so-called. Political correctness is destroying the very fabric of our society. Never before in history have people been so afraid to stand up against absurdity for fear of becoming a horrible name. The average European today would rather be raped or stabbed than called a racist. How stupid is that? Yep. And north of you, you've got the poster child for political correct liberalism, Justin Trudeau, talk about an imbecile. Silencing opposition by accusing anyone who dares to introduce facts and reason into the discussion. If you think a person taking a bucket to get water out of the yard by pouring it over a fence is stupid, then you're a racist, anti-Semite, Nazi, Islamophobe, homophobic, bigot. You know, when they show you in the psychologist room picture, what does that remind you of? Well, I'm afraid to the liberals, it's like what the Bible says, to the pure all things are pure, to the defiled everything is defiled. Political correctness is a weapon designed to silence people whose arguments they cannot refute. They want us to be silent and to retreat. In times of deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. Quote from Alexander Solzhenitsyn, "A decline in courage may be the most striking feature that an outside observer notices in the West today. The West has lost its civic courage. Such a decline in courage is particularly noticeable amongst the ruling elite and the intellectual elite, causing an impression of a loss of courage in the entire society. I'm afraid Western Europe has become a bunch of cowards, with very few exceptions." The Frankfurt School of Cultural Marxism utilized the Gramsci strategy, otherwise known as the termite strategy. Frankfurt School, these were communists in Germany, in Frankfurt, Germany, who fled when nationalists took over there, and they came to Harvard and Hollywood. And George Lucas, Herbert Marcuse says we've got to introduce foul language as a weapon against the bourgeois and against Christianity, introduce it to the arts and culture, and introduce it to films and everything else. These people, these Marxists, these Frankfurt School have made modern America the mess it is. And Antonio Gramsci, co-founder of the Italian Communist Party, he developed what he called the termite strategy. He said you cannot have a revolution in the West. Lenin got lucky, never to be repeated opportunities what they got in Russia. It's not going to happen in the West. West is too Christian. You've got to de-Christianize the West. We must be like termites, eating the insides of all the structures of the West, eating the heart out of every pillar of Western civilization, everything, education, entertainment, news media, religious institutions, political institutions, until the entire edifice rots and collapses. He said this will take 2 or 3 generations, but we've got to do it. What were the main aims of Frankfurt School? They listed the creation of racial offences, racism offences, continual change to create confusion, teaching sex and homosexuality to children, undermining schools and teachers' authorities, huge immigration to destroy national identity, promotion of excessive drinking, emptying of churches, make the legal system unreliable with a bias towards the victims of crime, dependency on the state and state benefits, control and dumbing down of the media, encouraging the breakdown of family, abolishing difference in education of boys and girls, and declaring women to be an oppressed class and men are oppressors. Their goal, the secularization of society. One of the most successful agents, Bill Crosby. You think of the Bill Crosby show. Everything referred to ideal model family, that's the act, without any reference to God, the Bible, or prayer. Solve every problem without God. That's their goal. To sideline Christianity, to deal with every issue without reference to the Bible. They had to de-Christianize the West. Their goal, they said, especially the way that Marcuse and Gramsci put it, to turn the Christian mind into a non-Christian mind and then into an anti-Christian mind. Save the planet, drop the Bible in the waste paper. These are their stickers. They are anti-Christian. And so today you can see people saying, go to hell and wow. If Jesus returns, kill him again. Fat chance. On the day of the Lord's return, this man will be calling for the mountains to fall upon him. He'd prefer to be buried under an avalanche than to face the wrath of the Lamb. Yes. Are you now, or have you ever been, a supporter of traditional marriage? I mean, if you want to say something like, marriage can only be between a man and a woman, hate speech! Now, they can wrap up control of internet speech by protect kids, anti-terrorism, they don't mind how they wrap it up. But the Marxists have identified 5 primary culture-transforming institutions for infiltration and subversion. Education, entertainment, news media, which is not a reflection of reality. Just take this classic pick. 2015, the Charlie Hebdo massacres, Paris, France. Here you have the leaders of 26 countries, including Merkel and Netanyahu and François Hollande of France, and they're leading 1 million Parisians in protest against these murders. I don't know what you thought when you saw the pictures, but I thought, security nightmare. How did the security people, 26 heads of state in the front of 1 million people, how on earth? Until you see the top of the picture. They had taken over the whole area. They had, this was rent-a-crowd. This is, they were all gone through security. They probably emptied the buildings. The whole place was a contained area. Now, there might have been 1 million Parisians marching for something that day, but they weren't being led by these characters. Deception. Here's Obama visiting Tanzania in Africa in 2013. Notice the cameraman is sort of crouching down so that he can give the impression of President Obama happily walking, shaking hands with people, looks like he's a man of the people, popular, and he's unconcerned for personal safety. Meanwhile, you see it's only 3 deep. They're all wearing the same outfits. They've all got the same flags, American, Tanzanian, and then there's all the security on the outside containment. And even here, the security's around as well. So this is a total photo op deception operation. Religious institutions, political institutions, those are the 5 culture-carrying institutions. Should you help the wicked and love those who hate the Lord, therefore the wrath of the Lord is upon you. Yuri Bezmenov, ex-KGB, said there's 4 stages of ideological subversion. The highest art of war is not to defeat your enemy in war, not to fight at all, but to demoralize your enemy to the extent that he gives up without a fight. Demoralization, that's where we are. They're demoralizing you all the time. My country, South Africa, has gone through demoralization to destabilization. I don't know when you're going to see these things on your streets. I'm sure you'd never have looting and things like that in the United States of America. You're far too law-abiding a society. But this is what's happening in our country, where we didn't even need to use locks, didn't even need to have things protected. May Day this year, They burnt out 39 Pentechnicons, these 18-wheeler trucks, looted them first, of course, and then burned them out at one road, at one toll gate, the Moy River toll gate on the N3 in KwaZulu-Natal near Durban. This is the sort of thing that communists do in our country regularly. They love destabilization and crisis. And then they come to normalization in preparation for the second phase of the revolution. Everything is designed to undermine the strength of the targeted enemy through subversion and slander. Straw man arguments are frequently used to weaken the resistance of a targeted group or individuals, and then they need to distract you. They need smoke screens behind which they can destroy everything that's a strength in a congregation, the community, or the country targeted. Is America being distracted? Well, in South Africa, they distract us with soccer. Soccer is the big thing. There's the national religion. While people distract with soccer, the government rips up and destroys the country. The issue focused on is seldom the real concern. Their motivation is the furthering of the revolution. Agenda 2. The issue is never the issue is the revolution. And discrediting the opposition. Socrates declared, when debate is lost, slander becomes the tool of the loser. This, by the way, is our parliament, our communists actually wear red overalls in parliament. This is Julius Malema, head of Everything for Free Party, EFF, which is leading the attack to take our farms. Those who resort to ad hominem arguments reveal they're unable to deal with the issue at hand without resorting to name-calling, character assassination against their opponents. Solzhenitsyn says, the simple truth of a courageous individual is to not take part in the lie. One word of truth outweighs the world. You can resolve to live your life with integrity. Let your credo be this. Let the light come into the world. Let even triumph. But not through me. If people can be confused, then they can be divided, which makes them easier to defeat. Hence, the Marxists aim at disinformation, division, and defeat for the country targeted. While they promise them liberty, they themselves are slaves of corruption. Degenerate entertainment, defiled art, decadent culture, all part of the strategy of cultural Marxists to rot the soul of a nation. And we need to protect our children. Roman leader Marcus Cicero declared in 42 BC, a nation can survive its fools and even the ambitious, but cannot survive treason from within. An enemy at the gates is less formidable, for he is known and he carries his banners open. But the traitor moves among those within the gates freely. His sly whispers rustling through all alleys, heard in the very halls of government itself. But the traitor appears not a traitor. He speaks in accents familiar to his victims. He wears their face, their garments. He appeals to the baseness that lies deep in the hearts of all men. He rots the soul of a nation. He works secretly and unknown in the night to undermine the pillars of the city. He infects the body politic so that it can no longer resist. A murderer is less to be feared. And so that is our enemy. Solzhenitsyn says the strength or weakness of a society depends more on its level of its spiritual strength than on its level of industrialization. Neither a market economy nor general abundance constitutes the crowning achievement of human life. If a nation's spiritual enemies, if its spiritual energies have been exhausted, it will not be saved from collapse by the most perfect government structure or by any industrial development. A tree with a rotten core cannot stand. Who will rise up for me against evildoers? Who will make a stand for me against the workers of iniquity? This is what our mission stands for. The sword, the word in Africa, literature for Africa. We receive textbooks from all over, donated from America to containers like these, 20-foot containers, packed full of Sunday school materials, school textbooks, Bibles and books. This is our mission house. And we do what we call frontline children. We move 18 tons by hand off these trailers, these containers, and distribute them throughout Africa. I remember early on my missionary work in Mozambique, hearing someone in Mozambique saying, the missionaries taught us how to read, yes, but it's the communists that gave us something to read. And so for us, this has been a great challenge to take good Christian textbooks, or produce good Christian textbooks throughout Africa and provide alternatives to UNESCO and all these lies that the Lord gives to them. So, are there any questions, any comments, complaints, or criticisms? Any other things? Yes?
In this country, the last 5 years, we've seen a lot of monuments removed of men like Robert E. Lee, Stonewall Jackson, men who were devout Christians. Do you see similar things taking place in your nation? And I would also point out, in the last 5 years, there have been monuments put up in Oklahoma City to satanic things right in the city, and in Minneapolis, they're doing likewise. We see a shift that's very anti-Christian.
Yes, either the society will express the wrath of God against sin, or society will express the wrath of man against godless people. And so if you tolerate it, before you know it, it will become dominant and it will not tolerate you, and before you know it, it's promoting evil. So yes, in fact, we thought it started in our city. They started by trying to pull down the statues of Cecil John Rhodes, who built University of Cape Town. Now, of course, most of us don't exactly like Cecil Rhodes, but still, it's history. They started there. Then they went for Andrew Murray statues. Then they went for all the others. And next thing we saw they're doing in America. So in some ways, it's like the trend started over there. Mandela started ripping down the old statues. Other comments, questions?
Just on the indoctrination. When I was teaching at Antioch University back in the 80s, Doug Wilson had a conference in Idaho on education, and I was working on my talk, and the thought came to me, and I called it to sister ever since, the State Indoctrination Network, S-I-N, and that's what it is.
So, State Indoctrination Network, well said. Thank you, sir. Yes?
Yeah, just a comment. The Black Hole of Calcutta, there was a historical marker there, but in the 1920s, that marked the Muslims, and some Indians had it removed. So this is not a new trend, removing things of this nature. Yeah.
Yes?
Did you see the article, I think it was in USA Today recently, and it was about how there are Christian farmers in South Africa that are being invited to Russia to buy cheap land that needs to be farmed, and the official policy, it's not the official policy of the government, but it's understood that we want Christian civilization to be behind the agriculture in Russia. And they actually said in the article in USA Today that, they mentioned Putin. I don't know if he's behind it, but it was saying that they want to promote Christian civilization in Russia. And I think that that's so interesting, because it used to be that the Republicans and people on the right were vehemently opposed to Russia because they were communists. Yeah. And now you see the Democrats thinking that the Russians are hiding under every rock, and they're behind every conspiracy. So what's your view as a South African and all that?
Well, for most of my life, Russia's been our enemy. And it's been quite a strange thing for us to see the United States, especially under Obama, funding Islamic terrorists like ISIS in the Middle East, beheading Christians and blowing up churches, and Russia trying to defend the Christians. So there's been an extraordinary turnaround that now Russia is no longer hated because it's communist, but hated because it's become Christian and against the homosexual agenda, pro-life, pro-family. And we've got friends who work there, who travel there, and they say they get tremendous religious freedom and even state help, even printing Bibles in Russia by the government itself.
One of the comments by the farmers was that